There's so much in those two paragraphs, those two short paragraphs. It just stirs my soul, that inspires, that challenges, that sparks my imagination for what God can do. Devotion to one another, unity of heart and mind, signs and wonders, the radical prioritization of people over possessions. There were no needy persons among them. Demonstrating God's goodness to everyone. What we see is a picture of what was and a picture of what could be. Now, I'm not asking for us all today to pool our resources and start a commune, though some in history have done so and done so as a powerful witness. I don't intend for us to have today a conversation about the feasibility of that financial model in the capitalistic and individualistic age in which we live, although that would be a fascinating dialogue. What I want us to note today is how God drew together many different people into a new community. A new community that would serve as a witness to the gospel. There would be a sign, that would be a foretaste of God's kingdom, God's good kingdom, not just by the words that were spoken and preached, but also by the embodied way of life together, this drawing together into a commonality, into a communality. What we're told in Acts is that there were people from all over the known world that were gathered in Jerusalem for the festival of Pentecost. It was people from all over the known world who came to believe in Jesus, who became part of this new faith experiment. Here in Acts, we see this first multi-gathering, this body of believers cutting across culture and gender and race and class, drawn simply and undeniably toward the good news of a risen Christ and the kingdom of God they so desperately desired, and therefore also drawn to one another. Theologian Willie Jennings writes, the space of this common was where life stories, life projects, plans, and purposes were being intercepted by a new orientation. This common is created by the Spirit. How could the things they held dear not be drawn toward the common, this new gathering, this ecclesia, this Greek word for church? Time, talent, and treasures, the trinity of possessions we know so well, would feel the pull of this holy vortex. When we are caught up in the goodness of God, when we're caught up in the love of God, when we are drawn toward life with God and in God, all of who we are is intercepted by a new orientation. The question then becomes, how now does this time that you have, this treasure that you have, this talent that you have, how now does this reflect your love for God and your love for others? For those of us who call ourselves Christians, the question is no longer what can I do with what is mine, but rather how do I steward what is God's? How do I steward what is God's? For the disciples in Acts, it reflected their allegiance to God and their commitment to one another, that they considered nothing their own, but everything available in service to the work of the kingdom and the needs in the community. It was a radical reimagining of how things work. It's a challenging concept for us. Here's Willie Jennings again. He says, matters of money are inescapable. They're inescapable. They are at the heart of discipleship, but they are not the heart of discipleship. Money here in Acts will be used to destroy what money normally is used to create: distance and boundaries between people. Distance and boundary is not merely between the haves and have-nots, but also between the needy and the comfortable, and between those who testify to Jesus and those who, like Jesus, help those with little or nothing. Jesus will join us, and he will use whatever we have to make the joining possible. And what we see here in Acts is a group of people drawn together, united in their followership of Jesus, united in utilizing whatever resources were at their disposal to break down barriers to entry and to flourishing, and they were united in disrupting the consequences of injustice and greed. And so also for us, that's a model that we're trying to follow. As I mentioned earlier, the Next 5 campaign, it coincides with the rolling out of our church's strategic plan, which contains 3 priorities, and each one we'll go through in the coming weeks. Talk more about each one in depth. First, it's transformational discipleship. It's helping people become more like Jesus. Second is inclusive welcome. It is cultivating a space where everyone feels the welcome, that everyone feels welcome and feels accepted. And third, it's collaborative justice. Collaborative justice, working together with others to create a more just city. Now, these are not unique. They're not a new revelation. They're not a change of course for us here at Christ City. They reflect a desire to go deeper in reflecting the heart of God and pointing to the kingdom of God and in doing good for the sake of those who are not yet part of our community here and for those who may never be a part of our community here. We do good to all, to everyone, as the church in Acts did.